stand up under oath in cross-examination. And what we saw at trial is it's very easy for the people who want to deprive gay and lesbian citizens of the right to vote to make all sorts of statements in campaign literature or in debates where they can't be cross-examined. But when they come into court and they have to support those opinions and they have to defend those opinions under oath and cross-examination, those opinions just melt away. And that's what happened here. There simply wasn't any evidence. There weren't any of those studies. There weren't any empirical studies. That's just made up. That's junk science. And it's easy to say that on television. But a witness stand is a lonely place to lie. And when you come into court, you can't do that. And that's what we proved. We put fear and prejudice on trial, and fear and prejudice lost.
I just wanted to point out that I think what we really should take away from what he said, David Boyce is saying, that that's the reason that we have a judicial branch. Because, as you pointed out, you know, in public debates, it's really easy to say whatever you want to say and to sound superficially compelling and superficially persuasive. But in court of law, you can't do that. That's why we have the judicial branch. It's why we have that academic, scholarly approach to law that is designed to examine these things. Because, you know, look at that 1992 ballot I mentioned earlier. They're literally taking away the protections from even the most basic discrimination. So clearly the majority is capable of violating the constitutional principles of this country. So what that comes down to is, what can we do about it as individuals? What can we do to make this better? Well, first strategy that we came up with was to educate Americans on the ethics of civic virtue in the context of our society, and how private personal morality is misplaced when it is imposed on others. What do you guys think of that? Does that make sense to you? Any reactions to that? Nothing at all? Yes, please.
I completely agree with that, because what I think is exactly what Ruth thinks, and I should make her favor using the sale. I mean, really, that's my feeling on it.
So what can we do to educate our fellow citizens in that way? How can we get that message out? How can we find some sort of agreed upon standard of civic virtue and ethics that will help people not to make these kind of moralistic judgments about what should be legal? I mean, can anyone think of anything that a class they might have taken or a lesson they might have learned growing up that might perhaps have prevented some of these proponents from even pushing for this law in the first place? Something in high school, maybe? I didn't even have to say. Maybe bring it to that level so that everyone thinks about these issues? That's a possibility. Which two specifically do you mean?
I'm not sure what they are.
Yeah, there's less adults that teach it
yes.
like middle level, and then they've got another one, which is like history and
Well, this is the choice that they were talking about this morning, like, you know, they're saying you choose it's, you are what you are, right? But then the question is, who are you? You know, do you really know who you are? And I'm not talking about you as an individual, I'm talking about you as a society that we live in, because we are social creatures. But yes, you are right that it is a belief, but it is a common belief, and we also have that common feedback. Like you send out information, I interact with you, I take that in, and I send out information. But then what we observe is actually, are you saying that that's the belief, or is that the tradition, or what is the truth? I mean, we can get into these debates of, you know, whose belief should we start to follow, or are you choosing not to follow the traditional belief of God, or is that the choice that you're making, that you're not, and that's the consequences? I mean, we can get into all these debates, but
I do think we should look at that for just a second, though. I mean, in a way, that's a really interesting point. So, what's the difference between what we would call a civic virtue, say freedom of speech, from what we would call a private worldview, such as homosexuality being immoral? Where do we draw a line between those two, between respecting, you know, civic rights and having beliefs about, you know, universal morality?
I don't think there is a line, really. I mean, we've been crossing that line and we've been stepping back to that line for lots of years now. I don't know if we'll ever get to where we are. People are agreeing with everything now.
Or going back to what you said, you know, or well, you know, the culture or a consensus among the people. So in California, the consensus, or a majority of the consensus that, you know, wasn't just one person, but majority of voters said, you know, this is what we think it should be. You know, but then,
they also are under the Constitution.
or I understand that, but they're saying, or the Constitution is supposed to reflect the will of the people. Am I right?
Says-
Well, it's the
People didn't,
law of the land.
the population never voted on the Constitution.
That's the point.
No, but the Constitution had to be approved at some point. Then, if people have a problem with the Constitution, they have the right to amend the Constitution.
Well, the people don't, the people that we elect.
If we can change the Constitution to say whatever most of us feel like having it say at any given point, why have a Constitution? Gene, I think what you're describing would be essentially the ancient Athens, where everyone just votes on every single issue. And, you know, apart from the obvious social justice consequences of that, wouldn't even be an effective way to run a society. You'd have one ballot initiative for 1 year is you trying to use funds that were approved by so totally different ballot initiatives last year, laws that contradict each other. I mean, and those were one of the major societal problems that plagued ancient Greece in its direct democracy. Because, you know, direct democracy is just not a good way to do things.
All right, I understood. But like the U.S. Constitution, there's a provision for change. You know, or it's not 100% set in stone. Or so when, right? So like when women got the right to vote, or that had to have a procedural change. You know, I don't see anything different other than who was originating that change. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, we're not saying you're wrong. We're saying you're right, but you have to acknowledge the fact that, you know, anyone can be wrong at any point in time. And then the people who usually make the rules in the law, they might come back and say, oh wait, we were wrong at one point, just like the abortion issue. But then we're kind of going back and forth with that also.
Yes.
On one of your slides where you, the constitutional Republican talked about this about putting fear and prejudice on trial. In your own opinion, what does it really mean? What is he talking about when he said that?
Well, in my opinion,
Yeah.
since that's how you phrase the question, I would say that prejudice is what caused these this ballot initiative to be passed in the first place. And this is really, I think, very obvious if you actually look at the campaign ads, at the literature that was disseminated in California prior to the Constitution. I mean, the things that they were saying, talking about to suggest that homosexuals are people that you need to protect your children from. How would that make you feel if you were homosexual? How would you feel if some demographic that you identify with were accused of being something that children should be protected from? In other words, that you were basically called a monster and a danger to children. That's the fear and prejudice. And what happened, what I think he was trying to get at, is that that fear and that prejudice works just fine as far as winning debates on internet forums and living rooms and cafes and gas stations. Yeah, it works on getting votes because those all work on the same principles.
Even if you take that issue and apply it to everything else, and you can see from the recent ads that's what they focus on. And about all, about every issue.
Exactly. And what it meant to put that on trial was, you know, a courtroom, and to borrow David Boyd's language, is a lonely place to lie. You know, you have to back those things up. You're going to be cross-examined. You're going to have to provide evidence. Everything you bring is going to be questioned. And it's all going to be scrutinized with an eye of truth, not an eye of popularity. And it has to measure up. And in this case, fear and prejudice didn't measure up. Okay, all right.
Just kind of sum this stuff up pretty quick as we're starting to get to the end of our time. We have to look at ourselves and how we treat the LGBT community and how we would want to be treated in return. Say you were gay, would you want someone to come up to you or walk around saying, oh, that's gay, oh, you're a faggot, stuff like that. You need to watch what you're saying, how you're acting, and celebrate things for them, not just, oh, this person got into a relationship, they got married. Be happy for lesbians and gay people that are now able to get married. Be happy for them too if you feel the same.
You should be able to have the same sort of warmth and emotional reaction to these members of the community as we do to anyone else. There's still people feeling that their feelings are still the same. And item number 4, it gets a little bit more into the language that you were talking about, which is force ourselves to clean up our act and how we speak. We cannot be respectful of anyone if we use pejorative terms about them in our daily speech, which many people still do with respect to the LGBT community. Like she was saying, you know, saying that something is gay, if you mean to say that it's bad, calling, you know, if you're a guy, calling another male friend the F word, a faggot, if you think that he's not being consistent with your idea of what a man should do or whatever that is. These things is just fundamentally disrespectful, and you know, it's easy to make a public service announcement about it, but you just can't have a healthy relationship with people who feel that way about what they are.
And lastly, we have to challenge ourselves to learn about the facts and the issues. This debate will actually every debate. That's what the whole get involved. You know, actually read the material, talk with your friends about it. You know, they're not gonna say that you're weird or anything like that. I talk to my friends all the time. You know, it's easy to shut off your brain instead of learning new things. You know, questions, and it's easy to just learn from sources out there. And we're at a university, they're going to open library, you can search whatever you want. We have internet nowadays. You want to
If you really want to learn more, you could become a part of Alliance. It's not just for gay people or lesbians. They have straight supporters too.
And the problem with our society today is we have the internet, we have 500 cable channels. It's way too easy to just tune in or log on to someone who's going to tell you what you want to hear. That's not the best way to grow or learn. And if there's no other questions, then that's about the size and shape of it.